My sister demanded I give her half my apartment because family shares everything. Parents got lawyers involved. The ending shocked everyone. Hi everyone. Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. I'm a 28-year-old guy and I honestly can't believe I'm writing this, but I need outside perspective because my family situation has gotten completely insane. 3 years ago, I bought my first apartment. Nothing fancy, just a decent 2-bedroom place in a good neighborhood that I'd been saving for since college. I work in software development, make good money, and I was proud as hell to finally have my own place after years of roommates and crappy rentals. I put down a substantial down payment, got approved for the mortgage entirely on my own income and credit, and have been making every payment myself since day one. Enter my sister, Amanda. She's 26, works part-time as a freelance graphic designer, and has always been the family favorite. Growing up, our parents constantly made us share everything. Toys, clothes, even birthday presents sometimes got divvied up between us, to be fair. I hated it then, but I figured that was just normal sibling stuff. What I didn't realize was that Amanda apparently never outgrew this mentality. 2 months ago, Amanda started dating this guy Kevin who comes from serious money. His family owns multiple properties, and Kevin mentioned offhandedly at a family dinner that his parents had bought him a condo when he graduated college. I could see the wheels turning in Amanda's head immediately. By the end of the evening, she was making comments about how unfair it was that I had my own place while she was still renting a studio apartment. At first, I thought she was just venting. But then the comments became more frequent and pointed. She started bringing up how we always shared everything as kids, how our parents taught us that family comes first, and how selfish it seemed for me to have a whole apartment to myself when she could really use the space and financial relief. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago during Sunday dinner at our parents' house. Amanda launched into this whole speech about family values and how she'd been thinking about our situation. She proposed that since I have a 2-bedroom apartment and she needs a place to live, the most logical and fair solution would be for me to add her name to the deed as a co-owner. Not as a tenant paying rent, as an actual owner with a 50% stake. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Amanda had apparently been working on our parents for weeks before this dinner. She'd convinced them that this arrangement would be perfect for both of us. I'd have help with the mortgage, she'd have stable housing, and it would bring the family closer together. She even had this whole presentation about how the apartment was technically large enough for 2 people and how we'd gotten along fine sharing space as kids. When I said absolutely not, the room went silent. My mom looked disappointed and said she'd hoped I'd be more open to helping family. My dad chimed in with concerns about Amanda's financial stability and how this could be a win-win situation. They made it sound like I was being unreasonable and selfish for not immediately agreeing to sign over half my property to my sister. I tried explaining that this wasn't like sharing toys as children. This is a mortgage I qualified for based on my income alone, payments I've been making solo for 3 years, and an investment I've worked incredibly hard for. I pointed out that Amanda has never contributed a single dollar toward the purchase, down payment, monthly payments, maintenance, or even utilities. The apartment is in my name only because it's mine. But my family kept pushing back. Amanda got teary-eyed talking about how hard it's been for her financially and how she just wants to feel secure. My parents brought up all the times we'd shared things growing up and how that had supposedly made us closer siblings. They suggested I was being influenced by materialistic thinking and forgetting what really matters in life. The guilt tripping has been relentless. I've gotten daily calls from my mom talking about family unity and how disappointed she is in my attitude. Amanda sends me articles about siblings who've successfully shared property and how it strengthened their relationships. My dad keeps mentioning how much easier things would be if we just worked together on this. They've also started involving extended family. My aunt called last week to tell me she heard about our disagreement and thinks I should consider Amanda's proposal more seriously. Apparently, my sister has been spinning this as me being unwilling to help her when she's struggling, rather than her asking for half ownership of property she's never paid for. The most frustrating part is that they're treating this like some minor sibling squabble rather than Amanda literally asking me to give her hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equity for free. When I point this out, they say I'm obsessing over money and missing the bigger picture about family support. Amanda has even started showing up at my apartment uninvited, measuring rooms and talking about how she'd arrange her furniture in her half of the space. She's mentioned looking into legal options to protect her interests, since we're family and should have equal rights to family assets. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds ominous. I feel like I'm going crazy. Is this normal family behavior? Am I actually being selfish here? The constant pressure is wearing me down, and I'm starting to second-guess myself even though logically I know this request is insane. My girlfriend thinks my family is completely out of line and that I should cut contact until they stop pressuring me. But these are my parents and my sister. I can't just write them off. At the same time, I can't comprehend signing over half my apartment to someone who's never contributed anything to it. Has anyone dealt with family members who feel entitled to your property? How do you handle this kind of pressure without destroying relationships? I'm honestly at a loss here. Update: found out my parents have been consulting lawyers about forcing me to share my apartment. It's been 6 weeks since my original post about my sister Amanda wanting half ownership of my apartment, and things have taken a much darker turn than I expected. Thank you to everyone who commented. Reading your responses helped me realize I wasn't crazy for thinking the situation was completely inappropriate. After my last post, I decided to stand firm and told my family clearly that I would not be adding Amanda to my deed under any circumstances. I thought that would be the end of it, but I severely underestimated how far they were willing to push this. The pressure campaign intensified immediately. My parents started calling it a family intervention and organized a meeting at their house with my aunt, uncle, and even my grandparents present. They'd apparently told everyone that I was refusing to help Amanda in her time of need and painted me as this selfish person who'd forgotten his family values. During this intervention, my grandmother actually cried while talking about how disappointed she was in the person I'd become. My aunt lectured me about family loyalty, and my uncle suggested that maybe I didn't deserve to have nice things if I wasn't willing to share them with family. It was surreal watching these people I'd respected my whole life basically gang up on me over my sister's ridiculous demand. Amanda sat there playing the victim perfectly, talking about her financial struggles and how hurt she was that her own brother wouldn't help her when she needed it most. She never mentioned that her help request involved me giving her half my apartment for free. She framed it as me refusing to let her live with me because I was too selfish to share space. But here's where it gets really messed up. Last week, I was having lunch with my cousin Brian, who's always been pretty neutral in family drama. He mentioned overhearing his mom, my aunt, on the phone discussing something about legal options and family property rights. When I pressed him for details, he told me that my parents had apparently been asking around about whether there were any legal ways to force me to share ownership of my apartment with Amanda. This floored me. I immediately started thinking about what legal avenues they could possibly pursue, and it occurred to me to check if there had been any unusual activity regarding my property. I pulled my credit report and checked public records, and while I didn't find anything alarming, the fact that they were even exploring this option was a massive red flag. I decided to consult with a lawyer myself, just to understand what I might be dealing with. The attorney I spoke with said that unless my parents had contributed to the purchase or were co-signers on the mortgage, they would have no legal standing to force any kind of ownership arrangement. However, she warned me about potential family manipulation tactics and suggested I secure all my important documents. That conversation motivated me to do some digging around my parents' house the next time I was there for dinner. While they were in the kitchen, I noticed some papers on my dad's desk that caught my attention. I know I probably shouldn't have looked, but one of them was clearly a consultation notes page from a law office. What I saw made my blood run cold. The notes included phrases like exploring adverse possession claims, family contribution arguments, and emotional distress considerations. There was also a section about constructive trust theories, and something about promissory estoppel. I'm not a lawyer, but it was clear they'd been getting legal advice about ways to challenge my sole ownership of the apartment. Even more disturbing, there were handwritten notes in my mom's writing that said things like Amanda's childhood bedroom costs and shared family vacations, contribution tracking. It looked like they were trying to build some kind of case that my parents' investment in my childhood somehow entitled Amanda to my adult property. I took pictures of what I could see without being obvious, but I felt sick to my stomach. These people had raised me, supposedly loved me, and now they were actively plotting to take my property to give to my sister. When I confronted my parents about this the next day, they didn't deny it. My dad said they were just exploring all options to help Amanda, and my mom insisted they weren't trying to hurt me, they just wanted what was fair for everyone. They claimed the lawyer had told them they didn't have a strong case anyway, but they'd wanted to understand their options. I asked them point blank how they could think it was acceptable to try to find legal ways to take my property, and my dad actually said, sometimes parents have to do difficult things to protect all their children. As if Amanda needing an apartment was somehow equivalent to a life-threatening emergency that justified stealing from me. Amanda was apparently aware of and supportive of their legal consultation. When I asked her about it, she said she thought it was proactive and showed how much our parents cared about her future. She still maintains that she deserves half the apartment because we're family and she needs the stability. The worst part is that they're all acting like I'm the unreasonable one for being upset about this. They keep saying they're just trying to find a solution that works for everyone, but their solution involves taking my property without my consent. I've now changed all my locks and secured all my important documents in a safety deposit box. I've also informed my mortgage company and property management about the situation in case anyone tries to make inquiries or claims about my apartment. My girlfriend has been incredibly supportive through all this, but she's also furious on my behalf. She keeps saying that this isn't normal family behavior and that I should consider cutting contact. Part of me knows she's right, but it's hard to accept that my own family would go this far. I'm not sure what their next move will be, but I'm prepared for whatever comes. I just never imagined that buying my own apartment would turn into a family war where my parents would literally consult lawyers about taking it away from me. Has anyone else dealt with family members who escalated property disputes to legal threats? I'm feeling pretty isolated right now since most of my extended family seems to be siding with my parents and Amanda. Update 2. 3 months later, family is threatening complete estrangement if I don't give in. It's been 3 months since my last update about my family's legal consultation regarding my apartment, and somehow things have gotten even worse. I never thought I'd be writing another update, but the situation has escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. After I confronted my parents about seeking legal advice, they went completely silent for about 2 weeks. I thought maybe they'd finally realized how inappropriate their behavior had been and were backing down. I was wrong. What they were actually doing was regrouping and planning a more comprehensive strategy to pressure me into compliance. It started with my mom showing up at my workplace during my lunch break. She managed to get past building security by claiming to be delivering something important to me, and she cornered me in the lobby to have what she called a heart-to-heart conversation. She told me that the family had been discussing the situation extensively and had reached a unanimous decision. Either I agreed to share ownership of my apartment with Amanda, or I would no longer be welcome at family gatherings, holidays, or any family events. She framed this as everyone being disappointed in my selfishness and needing to protect Amanda from further emotional harm. When I pointed out that this was essentially extortion, my mom broke down crying in the middle of my office lobby, saying I was breaking her heart and that she never raised me to be so cruel to my own sister. The whole scene was mortifying, especially since several of my co-workers witnessed it. That evening, I received a group text message that had been sent to our entire extended family. The message, sent from my dad's phone, announced that I had chosen to prioritize material possessions over family relationships, and that effective immediately, I was being excluded from all family functions until I came to my senses and did the right thing by Amanda. The text included details about how Amanda was struggling financially and emotionally, how my refusal to help her was causing the whole family distress, and how my selfishness was tearing apart our previously close-knit family. It asked for everyone's support in helping me understand the error of my ways. Within hours, I was getting calls and messages from aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends. Some were sympathetic and confused about the situation, but others had clearly bought into my parents' narrative completely. My uncle Robert left me a voicemail calling me a disgrace to the family name. My cousin Sarah sent a long text about how disappointed she was in me for abandoning Amanda when she needed help most. The most hurtful message came from my grandmother, who sent a handwritten letter saying she was ashamed of the man I'd become and that my grandfather would be rolling over in his grave if he knew how I was treating my sister. She said she'd be removing me from her will and didn't want to see me again unless I made things right with Amanda. Amanda herself has been playing her victim role to perfection. She started a GoFundMe page for emergency housing assistance that included a long sob story about how her own brother had abandoned her in her time of need. She didn't explicitly mention the apartment situation, but she heavily implied that I had the means to help her and was choosing not to. The page raised almost $3,000 from sympathetic family friends and distant relatives. My parents also organized what they called a family meeting at their house to discuss the situation without me. According to my cousin Brian, who's remained somewhat neutral, the meeting was basically a 2-hour session of everyone discussing how terrible I was and brainstorming ways to pressure me into changing my mind. They came up with several new tactics. My aunt started sending me daily emails with articles about family loyalty and sibling relationships. My uncle began commenting on every social media post I made with passive-aggressive remarks about family values. My mom started calling my girlfriend directly, trying to convince her to talk sense into me. The pressure campaign extended to my professional life as well. My dad somehow got the contact information from my boss and sent him an email expressing concern about my recent behavioral changes and suggesting that stress might be affecting my work performance. Fortunately, my boss just forwarded me the email and asked if everything was okay at home, but it was incredibly inappropriate and invasive. Amanda escalated her own tactics too. She started showing up at my apartment building and buzzing random units until someone let her into the lobby, then she'd wait by my door for hours. She left flowers, notes, and even groceries outside my apartment with messages about how much she missed having me as a brother and how sorry she was that money had come between us. She also began calling my neighbors to introduce herself as my sister and explained that we were having a family disagreement about living arrangements. She implied that I was being unreasonable and asked them to talk to me about the importance of family. One of my neighbors actually approached me in the hallway to suggest I work things out with my sister because she seemed like such a sweet girl who just wanted to be close to her brother. The social media harassment reached new levels as well. Amanda started posting throwback photos of us as children with captions about how close we used to be and how sad it was that, growing up and gaining material things, had changed our relationship. She shared memes about sibling bonds and family loyalty, clearly directed at me. My parents joined in with their own social media campaign, posting about the importance of family and sharing articles about adult children who had lost their way. They began referring to themselves as parents who were grieving the loss of a son who had chosen money over family. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago when my grandmother had what my family described as a health episode related to the stress of our family conflict. My mom called me sobbing, saying that the doctor had told them that stress was contributing to my grandmother's condition and that I needed to end this situation immediately before something terrible happened. When I tried to visit my grandmother in the hospital, security informed me that I was on a list of people who were not allowed to see her. My family had actually banned me from visiting my own grandmother during a health crisis because I wouldn't give my sister half my apartment. That's when I realized how far beyond rational behavior this situation had gone. My family was willing to use my grandmother's health as leverage to manipulate me into giving away my property. They were treating me like a criminal for refusing to hand over something I had worked for and paid for entirely on my own. I've now been completely cut off from my entire family for refusing to comply with their demands. I missed Thanksgiving, my cousin's wedding, and my nephew's birthday party. Every family event that happens gets posted on social media with pointed comments about how sad it is that I'm missing these important moments because of my choices. My girlfriend has been my rock through all of this, but even she's struggling with the constant stress and drama. She suggested that maybe we should move to a different city to get away from the harassment, and honestly, I'm starting to consider it. I've consulted with a lawyer again about the harassment, and while most of what they're doing isn't technically illegal, it's definitely affecting my quality of life. The lawyer suggested documenting everything and considering a restraining order if the behavior escalates further. The hardest part is the doubt that creeps in during quiet moments. When you have literally everyone you've known your entire life telling you that you're wrong, it's hard not to question yourself. But then I remember that they're asking me to give away half of my most valuable asset to someone who has never contributed anything to it, and I know I'm not the crazy one here. I never thought that standing up for my own property rights would result in losing my entire family, but here we are. I'm hoping that eventually, they'll come to their senses and realize how inappropriate their behavior has been, but I'm not holding my breath. Update 3. 6 months later, unexpected resolution and apologies. I honestly never thought I'd be writing another update to this saga, but something incredible happened that I never saw coming. It's been 6 months since my family cut me off for refusing to give Amanda half my apartment, and the resolution came from the most unexpected source imaginable. For the first few months after my last update, the situation remained unchanged. I was still completely ostracized from the family, still dealing with occasional harassment, and still questioning whether I'd made the right choice despite knowing logically that I had. My girlfriend and I had actually started making serious plans to relocate to another city when everything changed. 3 weeks ago, I got a text from Amanda that simply said, "Can we talk? It's important." I almost deleted it without responding, but something about the tone made me hesitate. After 6 months of melodramatic victim posts and manipulation tactics, this message felt different, quieter, more genuine. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I brought my girlfriend with me for moral support and told Amanda up front that if this was another attempt to pressure me about the apartment, I was leaving immediately. What happened next completely blindsided me. Amanda broke down crying before she even ordered her coffee, but these weren't the manipulative tears I'd become accustomed to. These were genuine, remorseful tears of someone who'd had a major realization about their behavior. It turns out that Amanda's relationship with Kevin, the wealthy guy she'd been dating, had progressed to the point where they got engaged 2 months ago. She moved in with him and started experiencing his family dynamics firsthand. And apparently, Kevin's family made our family look reasonable by comparison. According to Amanda, Kevin's parents immediately started treating her like she was trying to take advantage of their son's wealth. They demanded she sign a prenuptial agreement that was so one-sided it essentially left her with nothing if the marriage ended. They insisted she contribute equally to household expenses despite the massive income disparity between her and Kevin. Most relevantly, Kevin's sister Jessica decided that since Amanda was now family, she should share her possessions with the family. Jessica started showing up at Amanda and Kevin's place and helping herself to Amanda's clothes, jewelry, and personal items. When Amanda objected, Jessica said that family should share everything and that Amanda was being selfish by hoarding her possessions. Sound familiar? But it got worse. Jessica decided that since she was having financial difficulties, Amanda should add her name to Amanda's car registration as a co-owner. She argued that since they were sisters-in-law now, Amanda's car should belong to both of them equally. Jessica even went to Kevin's parents to complain about Amanda's selfishness in refusing to share her car. The breaking point came when Jessica and Kevin's parents suggested that Amanda should give Jessica half ownership of her freelance business since family businesses should benefit everyone in the family. They pointed out that Jessica had some marketing experience and could be a valuable partner, so it only made sense for Amanda to share ownership of something she'd built entirely on her own. As Amanda was telling me this story, I could see the exact moment when she realized what she'd done to me. The parallels were so obvious that even she couldn't miss them. She'd experienced firsthand what it felt like to have family members feel entitled to things she'd worked for, and she'd realized how insane and violating it was. "I became everything I hated about Jessica," she said, crying harder. "I did to you exactly what she was doing to me, except somehow I convinced myself it was different because we're siblings and we shared things as kids. But sharing toys isn't the same as demanding half ownership of someone's apartment. I can't believe I didn't see how crazy I was being." She went on to explain that the experience with Kevin's family had opened her eyes to how manipulative and entitled her behavior had been. She'd started seeing our parents enabling in a new light too, recognizing the pressure tactics and emotional manipulation for what they were. "I realized that if someone tried to take half my car or half my business just because we're family, I'd think they were insane," she continued. "But somehow I convinced myself that your apartment was different because I needed it more than you needed to keep it all to yourself. I was so focused on my own problems that I completely ignored how hard you'd worked for what you have." The conversation lasted for 3 hours. Amanda apologized profusely, not just for demanding ownership of my apartment, but for the entire campaign of harassment and manipulation that followed. She acknowledged that she'd weaponized our entire family against me and had played victim to justify her increasingly unreasonable behavior. Most importantly, she told me that she'd broken up with Kevin after realizing that his family's entitlement issues were probably genetic and that she didn't want to spend her life dealing with people who thought other people's possessions were communal property. But Amanda's apologies were just the beginning. She told me that she'd also had a long conversation with our parents about their behavior. She'd called them out for consulting lawyers behind my back, for organizing the family ostracism campaign, and for using my grandmother's health as leverage. She'd made it clear that their treatment of me had been completely inappropriate and that she was ashamed of the role she'd played in it. 2 days after my conversation with Amanda, I got a call from my mom. She was crying and apologizing, saying that Amanda had helped her see how far out of line the family had gotten. She admitted that they'd been so focused on Amanda's immediate needs that they'd completely lost sight of basic fairness and property rights. My dad called the next day with his own apology. He acknowledged that consulting lawyers about my property had been a massive violation of trust and that organizing the family against me had been manipulative and wrong. He said he'd been so caught up in wanting to solve Amanda's problems that he'd forgotten to consider whether their proposed solution was ethical or reasonable. The most surprising call came from my grandmother. Apparently, Amanda had visited her and explained what had really been happening, including the fact that Amanda had been asking for ownership of property she'd never paid for rather than just help with housing. My grandmother was horrified by the family's behavior and apologized for the harsh things she'd said and written to me. Over the past 3 weeks, I've received apologies from most of my extended family members. Many of them said they'd only heard Amanda's version of events and had no idea that she was asking for ownership rather than just help. Others admitted they'd gotten caught up in the family drama and hadn't really thought through what was being asked of me. My Uncle Robert, who'd left that harsh voicemail calling me a disgrace, actually drove to my apartment to apologize in person. He said he'd been completely wrong about the situation and was embarrassed by his behavior. Amanda has also made public amends. She shut down her GoFundMe page and refunded the donations, explaining to contributors that she'd misrepresented the situation and that her family conflict was actually her fault. She posted on social media acknowledging that she'd been entitled and manipulative, and thanking me for standing firm even when it cost me relationships. Most importantly, she's been standing up to our parents when they try to fall back into old patterns of enabling her or pressuring me. When my mom suggested that maybe I could still help Amanda find a nice apartment since we're talking again, Amanda immediately shut that down and told our parents that my housing situation was none of their business. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly. Amanda has been going to therapy to work on her entitlement issues and her tendency to manipulate people when she doesn't get what she wants. She's gotten a full-time job and found her own apartment, which she's paying for entirely herself. My relationship with my parents is also improving, though there's still work to be done. They're both in therapy as well, trying to understand how their favoritism and enabling created such a toxic family dynamic. They've committed to treating their children more equally and to never again pressuring one child to give up their possessions for another child's benefit. The irony isn't lost on any of us that it took Amanda experiencing exactly what she'd put me through for her to understand how wrong she'd been. She's told me several times that she's grateful I stood firm and didn't enable her entitled behavior, even though it was painful at the time. My girlfriend and I have decided to stay in our current city after all. The family drama that had been consuming our lives has finally resolved, and we're both relieved to have that stress lifted. We're even cautiously optimistic about future family gatherings. I've learned a lot from this experience about setting boundaries and standing up for myself, even when it means standing alone. I've also learned that sometimes the people you love can get so caught up in their own problems that they lose sight of basic fairness and respect, but that doesn't mean they can't recognize their mistakes and change their behavior. Most importantly, I've learned that owning something means having the right to say no to people who want to take it from you, even if those people are family. Amanda's experience with Kevin's family confirmed what I'd known all along, that allowing people to feel entitled to your possessions doesn't actually help them in the long run. It just enables entitled behavior and creates resentment. This whole situation could have permanently destroyed my family relationships, and I'm grateful that it didn't. But I'm even more grateful that I stood my ground and refused to give in to the pressure, because doing so ultimately forced everyone involved to confront their toxic behaviors and make real changes. To anyone dealing with family members who feel entitled to your property or possessions, it's okay to say no, even if it causes conflict. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved, even if it doesn't feel that way at the time. Amanda and I are planning to have dinner next week, at her new apartment that she found and is paying for all by herself. And my deed still has exactly one name on it, mine.